say writers, Ryan Fortier and Edward Pace. Hi guys, how you doing today?
Good. How are you?
Pretty good. First off, thank you guys for doing this. Because I commented on your blog post, Ryan. I just got to put that out there that it was your blog. And then I was like, just left a comment, hey, would you like to, do an interview on a podcast? And 2 days later, I realized, I don't know if he's going to check the comments on his blog post. So I just did a quick search on Facebook. I found you, and here we are. It's, a few weeks coming, but definitely exciting to have you on.
Yeah, I'm really glad to be here. Me and Ed always love talking about this journey that we went on together.
Yeah, it is incredible. I did just the amount of time I spent reading through that, and I did end up reading just some of your scripts, and both of you did a fantastic job. So if you could just start and tell me what about Jimmy Neutron, like what started this experience? What started the initial concept? Which one of you did? How did you both get involved? And what was the start of this from the beginning?
Well, the really quick version is both Ed and myself. We had always kind of written Jimmy Neutron fan fiction to kind of practice and hone our writing skills. Right before I started going to vet school about 4 years ago, I got a review for one of my stories that I was finishing up on, saying that this reviewer thought I would be a really great writer for Jimmy Neutron, that I would be a good writer for the TV show. And that touched me a lot more than I thought it would, because I thought to myself, I think I would be, and I realized that would be my ultimate dream job, even though it was, of course, seeming utterly impossible. But I couldn't really get that idea out of my head, so I talked to Ed and another fan fiction writer, Sandra, and the three of us agreed that we liked fan fiction, but we wanted to try screenwriting. And what better way to try screenwriting than to try to bring back the show that really inspired all three of us. So that's kind of what started the whole idea, a review for one of my fanfics.
Okay, so you frequently you would write Jimmy Neutron fan fiction. Ed, did you have the same experience? Like, were you writing Jimmy Neutron fan fiction as well?
Absolutely. I started writing Jimmy Neutron fan fiction in high school. I wrote every so often, kind of because I enjoyed the show. I really loved the characters a lot. And kind of like Ryan, I think it was the same reviewer who wrote on a review for one of my stories and said that, you're a pretty good writer. I think you and Ryan would be good writers for the show. So it kind of got both of us thinking, and we got in touch. I'm trying to remember how we brought Sandra into the fold. Because I know she gave us both reviews, or the reviewer gave us both reviews. I'm trying to remember how Sandra got involved.
Yeah, it was, so basically you and I got those reviews, and we kind of talked a little bit before. We kind of been fanfiction friends online. And this other writer, Sandra, or LinkLover77 on fanfiction.net, I'd really liked her stories. We'd also kind of been friends, the two of us, and I knew that it would be impossible to learn how to write scripts and bring a show back, just the two of us. I knew we would need a third person on the team, so I reached out to her, and she agreed to do it.
Oh, okay. Now, you mentioned that you liked the characters and stuff. Were there any? Have there been any other shows before or since that have really caught your attention that you've kind of wanted to experiment with and write scripts for?
Oh, definitely. For myself, Hey Arnold probably was one of the shows that really caught my attention at first. I thought, of all the Nickelodeon shows so far, it had some of the best writing. The kids really sounded like real kids to me, and it didn't talk down to its audience. It was a very mature, nice kind of voice to it that I liked. I liked Nickelodeon's version of Doug, and more recently, since you're talking about 2000s Nickelodeon, the show Avatar and its sequel, Legend of Korra. A huge fan of those. I'm truly awestruck by just the storylines, the characters, and the animation that they brought in that show. So I think, there are plenty of shows that inspire me and continue to inspire me. And obviously, I would be happy to contribute something of my own, to the animation world.
Right. And definitely with the Hey Arnold thing, that show has definitely stood the test of time. I mean, it's the first time they're ever bringing back a show, technically in a movie form. But
right.
Now, so when you guys were getting together, the three of you, and proposing starting a season 4, if I remember correctly, Ryan, in your blog, you mentioned getting in contact with the creator of Jimmy Neutron. Is that correct?
Yes. So when we started this idea, personally, I'm sure it kind of holds true for Ed and Sandra as well, but I personally always distantly dreamt of being a TV screenwriter. I thought I would really enjoy it and might be good at it, but I also knew, even though I didn't know the details, that it would be nearly impossible to break into the industry as an unknown. So our very quick initial plan was give ourselves a couple of months to come up with some script ideas, season ideas, research the industry, learn as much as we could about the craft, come up with one solid script, a complete 22-minute episode script. And then once we had all of that done, once we weren't so uneducated, contact creator Keith Alcorn. And so kind of get his feel for this project, but only do that after we showed that we weren't complete amateurs and just kind of begging for him to bring the show back and for him to do all the work. We wanted to sound educated.
Right. How did you end up getting in contact with him?
So this reviewer who left me the review, Brittany, she has been Facebook friends with Keith for a long time, and she had always told us that Keith was very kind, very approachable. He'd answered a couple fan questions I had just about the show. He'd always been very respectful, and so I kind of spoke to him quickly on Facebook before this whole process, and so that's how we found him, Facebook, and with some help from Brittany.
Oh, okay. So it wasn't that hard to kind of track the guy down, and from what you're saying, definitely very approachable about the show and everything about that.
Mm-hmm. Obviously, in this day and age with Facebook and everything, this would have been a lot harder to do 20 years ago, where he would have had to read fan mail and we would have had to correspond that way.
Right. I mean, how quickly did he respond? Because I'm friends with quote unquote friends with Butch Hartman on Facebook, but other than leaving a few comments here and there on things he posts, I never think about sending him a message, because I imagine once you're out there and everybody knows you're there, they're probably constantly getting a lot of messages. So when you guys, started talking to him, how quickly was he to respond?
He responded very quickly, within a couple days, and I'm sure we'll go more into this as we get through more of the process, but as a general statement, the entire crew of Jimmy Neutron was amazingly receptive to helping us with this to a ridiculous degree. They absolutely did way more than anyone should ever expect creators of the show to do, or staff of the show to do for their fans. You could tell that they really wanted the show back and that they cared about the people that their show touched.
Yeah, I'm guessing most of in total, how many writers, keeping Keith to the side, how many other people did you talk to that actually worked on Jimmy Neutron?
The other biggest person, the biggest player, was Mike Gazaway, director of the show. He was an enormous influence and enormous help, and I'm sure we're going to get into that later, because he was pretty much the backbone of this project. And there were two other writers on the show, Daryl Vickers and Andrew Nichols, and they also looked over the scripts and provided us a lot of feedback. Okay.
I'm just going to go on a limb and guess that a lot of them have moved on to other work. So would you say they dedicated a lot of time to this project that you guys were mainly working on, but for them would be something on the side? Did they really get into it?
I think so. They gave us a surprising amount of feedback, considering that, most of them had their own other projects and stuff they were working on. They're still working professionals, but they a lot of emails, a lot of in-depth comments on how we could improve episodes, and just a lot of feedback in general.
Yeah, Andrew Nichols and Daryl Vickers, they went through our premiere script. It was about 35 pages or so. Went through it, gave 5 or so comments on each page. Just, you could tell they really poured through this thing and were really trying to help us out. And Mike Gazaway just was unbelievably helpful. He went through pretty much every iteration of all of our scripts that we wrote, our season plan. He contacted people at Nickelodeon. He answered our general advice about the industry. He was talking to us, an hour a day, pretty much every day during this year-long endeavor. He does like 8 other projects on the side as his full-time job, so I don't even know how he had the time to do all of that.
So even before you packaged this all and sent it off to Nickelodeon, he was contacting people there about it?
Yeah. Do you want us to kind of give you the basic rundown of how the thing was developed?
Yeah, absolutely.
So, like I said, initially it was me, Edward, and Sandra. We knew we had to get something together. We couldn't just ask Keith, "Hey, can you bring the show back and have us be the writers," even though we have no experience. So, for about, I would say, a month and a half, we concocted a 13 episode season plan where we had plot lines for the episodes, how they connected to the other episodes, an overall season arc. Then we made a 22-minute script, so about 35 pages or so, for what would have been the first episode of that season. We revised that several times for a few weeks, constantly every day, looking it over, giving feedback. Then we contacted Keith, who said he was happy to help us and give us pointers, but that he didn't have too much pull at Nickelodeon anymore, which is totally understandable. He suggested we kind of reach out to other people and say if they might be able to help. We contacted Mike Gazaway. That's when things took off to an insane degree because he still was friends with some people at Nickelodeon, some executives. So he just helped us over a few months really finalize everything. We wrote 3 more scripts because we wanted to show that it wasn't just one script that we could write. We kind of just wanted to have a little smorgasbord of different types of episodes. We adjusted our season plan to include 26 episodes, which is what he thought we would be pulled back for. And then we also had to write some other documents, like just a kind of summary of what the project would be, of who we were, and then a proposal letter. And once we had all of those things done, which took many months, he eventually shipped them off to Nickelodeon and had one of his executive friends look at it. So that's the very basic timeline overview of the project.
Yeah, geez, I can't imagine. And you guys said almost pretty much daily, the 3 of you were working together on these scripts, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
Wow. Now, Nickelodeon has canceled and revived shows before. As we all know, both Fairly Odd Parents and Jimmy Neutron were canceled in 2006, with Fairly Odd Parents getting brought back, I believe, the following year, and Jimmy Neutron being left in the dust. So what are your thoughts, because they did end up making the spinoff that I know everybody seems to hate, and I have not rewatched it yet, but because in their response, Nickelodeon's official response to you guys, they did kind of say, we did do this project, and we're not really looking to revive Jimmy Neutron again. What are your thoughts on their response in total, and how it felt for you guys?
I mean, in a sense, I guess I get where they're coming from. They felt they had already done what they could with the show, and they have so many other shows they need to kind of do and balance and stuff like that. Obviously, it was pretty disappointing, because we put our heart and soul into this. But as far as the future goes, I'm really not sure. I could see it where maybe in another few years or so, they have different executives maybe who are mulling this over, and maybe they have a change of mind. It seems like they're kind of interested in 90s Nickelodeon shows again, a lot of them. So maybe in another 5 years or so, they'll be more interested in this kind of thing. I could see that happening, so I still have some hope for that.
Yeah, and I think the biggest thing is that obviously, like Ed said, while it hurts to be rejected, we totally understand Nickelodeon's position. This would be a huge gamble on their part. They already had tried to continue the Jimmy Neutron franchise, and it didn't work. And I think if there was one thing we could go back and change for me personally, it would be to consider more of a reboot than a straight revival, because I can especially understand that they wouldn't want to keep the series going right where it left off 11 years later. I could understand why that would be a hard thing to sell to a company, especially when your age range has already, graduated from kids shows in general. The people who watched Jimmy Neutron 11 years ago are probably not turning into Nickelodeon Weekly today in general.
Yeah, I would attest to that, unfortunately, because even myself, their last few shows I just haven't caught yet. I'll still catch up on Ninja Turtles and SpongeBob, but hey, with their Legends of the Hidden Temple movie this later this year, and their Hey Arnold project, I think it's the I think it's the creator of Adventures of Pete and Pete, or the producer, or somebody with that show is now in charge of Nickelodeon programming now, and that's kind of where this impulse of old shows is coming in. Now, what year did you guys actually send it off to Nickelodeon? When was that?
So we started this project about May of 2012. So I believe we sent it to Nickelodeon early 2013, about February, I believe.
Okay. Have you now? You said Mike was the biggest pushing drive of this project. Have you talked to him maybe recently about maybe resubmitting it to the newer people who actually seem quite involved in reviving old Nickelodeon stuff?
You know, I don't think we have, because he's just so busy with so many of his own projects. I like him as a friend, as a person, and I don't want to just keep pushing him about this for the rest of our lives.
Right.
And we did enter a screenwriting contest for Nickelodeon a few months ago, just a general screenwriting contest, and we did. I think we might have tried to submit the scripts again, or one of the scripts, just as kind of a Hail Mary, and they didn't really look at it again. So I think for right now, we're going to try to let things go and maybe just see, on the off chance that like the Hey Arnold revival really stirs some nostalgia pot, that they might be interested. But for now, we're kind of just taking a step away from it.
Yeah. And the one thing that really stood out to me in their letter to you, kind of the silver lining in this whole thing, is that they wanted to see something original from you guys. They were at least impressed enough to say, hey, send us something original. Did you guys end up sending something, some other scripts of maybe original projects to them afterwards?
Yes, we did.
I guess I'll talk about that. So yeah, we did. We came up with a show called, originally it was called Continuum. It was about I believe she's 15-year-old girl who's sent back in time by her parents from the year 2040 to our current time, which was 2015 when we were writing it. And this girl would have tried to realize why her parents stranded her back in our time, while trying to rebuild a time machine and get back home, while making new friends and trying to evade this sinister corporation who was trying to steal her technology. So it would have been a much more serialized show, a more action-heavy show than our Jimmy Neutron plan.
And would it clearly be more like a sci-fi-based type show?
Yeah,
Definitely. I mean, we try. I think we tried to treat the science and technology pretty seriously, and so we had thought maybe that would be sort of a different sort of thing for Nickelodeon. It would give them sort of a different flavor. And yeah, I think this would have targeted more of a demographic like Avatar and Legend of Korra targeted. But yeah, to answer your question, yes.
Yeah, unfortunately, they passed on that proposal too. I think it was clear in their letter that they read it over and at least considered it, but they said that they weren't interested in serialized content at the moment. They were more interested in comedy. So
yeah,
unfortunately,
I think it was the way they handled that final season of Legend of Korra kind of spoke volumes on their treatment of the serialized shows. Because if I remember correctly, they just kind of started putting the episodes online, and they were getting leaked, and then even just the finale, they just kind of threw it out there like randomly with no support for it at all.
Yeah, I don't want to speak badly of Nickelodeon, because, like I said, I think it was very kind of them just to consider looking at our stuff. And I love Legend of Korra. It's probably my biggest inspiration than Avatar, but I do think the scheduling issue, I do think it's fair to say that they kind of gave up on the show a little bit at the end.
Yeah. Oh, no, I would never speak badly of Nickelodeon, even in the times I disagree with them. Now, what I noticed going back and rewatching all of Jimmy Neutron is just how mature the third season got in terms of character development. And even then, there was a lot of it's not a serialized show. You can just watch any episode and not feel like you missed out. But they do have those moments, those episodes where either bringing back a villain or bringing back an old storyline really pushed in that third season. That so far has been my favorite season. What about you guys? What are the episodes or moments in that show that really stand out to you guys as fans?
Oh, as far as seasons go, honestly, I enjoyed all of them. I thought they're a little bit different in terms of tone, I guess you could say, and in terms of character development. Season 1 episodes, you can kind of tell, are a little bit different than season 3. The thing I think that you mentioned that we do like is the continuity. It did have some continuity, and we're pretty big on that, and so we appreciated that. As far as favorite episodes goes, let's see, trading places. I forget which one. I forget the exact name of the episode, but where basically Jimmy and Cindy switched minds and switch bodies. Let's see, that was one of my favorites. Feel free to join in, Ryan.
Yeah, I will say, like Ed, in general, I really like the continuity of the show, and I think what I like most about the Jimmy Neutron in general is that it's a very subtle show. I just like that, the romance, they never took it to extremes. They never had like these 11-year-old characters declaring their love, and really it was more childish. It was very real, it seemed to me. Like, these were characters who were struggling to be friends, who clearly had feelings towards each other, and were trying to learn how to deal with them. And I liked that over the 3 seasons, you can clearly see that the 5 of them became, really the boys versus the girls in season 1. By the end of season 3, there were quite a few moments where you can tell that they were becoming a real family. And that was a real aspect that I enjoyed. And as far as favorite episodes, my 2 favorites would be King of Mars, because it shows a lot of that group camaraderie. And again, a lot of kind of romance that's definitely there, but it's not the only focus of the episode. It's not the only thing they're harping on. And my other favorite would be My Big Fat Spy Wedding, because, again, there's some subtle romance, there's some subtle hints to how the gang is real friends and tight at that point, but that also is just hilarious to me, that entire episode. Ed is very annoyed by how funny I find that episode. I always try to get the 2 of us to watch it when we hang out together.
Yeah, like every single time, it's like, Ed, have we seen My Big Fat Spy Wedding? I'm like, yes, we see it every time. And I think it's the
fans.
Hammers?
The fan parade. That's my favorite part.
It's the annual parade of fans. And he laughs like hysterically every single time that scene comes on. It's so funny.
I was generally surprised going through. There was an episode I always saw, the McSpanky's episode where they get the men at work and they get jobs. And at the end of that episode, the 3 space bandits, who are essentially caricatures of John Travolta, Mr. T, and John Lovitz. So I didn't even realize they gave him names in the next episode. So they find the restaurant, and so when I got to that episode, I'm like, man, they never had another episode with these guys until I got to season 3, and I realized that this episode I never saw before with the shrinking town not only tied that loose end up, but also gave amazing names to these characters, and I was laughing throughout the whole thing because one of the John Travolta alien is named Travoltron, and I was laughing on the fact that they just openly came out and like, yeah, these are we're doing impressions of these actors. It's fine. And
those guys were actually in another episode too before that, at the beginning of season 2, where they mined for astro rubies.
Yeah, so the one where they debuted in.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I don't know if it was near season 3 or I just remember Nickelodeon during the summer where they had the Jimmy Timmy Power Hour 2 and 3 in the same year. They weren't very consistent with the new episodes, because I loved that moment every Friday Night Nicktoons, and just the consistency, which Nickelodeon, and almost definitely Cartoon Network too, has kind of dropped the consistent new episodes. I think for their bigger shows, I think like Adventure Time and Regular Show get consistent spots every week, but everything else just kind of jumbles around. But there were episodes in season 3 I just never saw before, because there was around that time where they dropped that consistency, and but it was nice to be able to go back and watch these shows again. So to kind of lean back just to everything that happened. Were there any moments where you guys throughout that whole year process kind of, did it slow down at any point where when you had someone like Mike just kind of pushing you forward, were there a lot of moments like that, or very few, just because of the enthusiasm?
I think for the most part, we kept a really consistent clip. Looking back, it seems to me like we were talking at least half hour every single day, constantly throwing in our own individual rewrites to all our scripts and plans. We were having weekly Skype meetings to talk about the developments we've made. The only time it really slowed down in my head, and Ed, correct me if you remember differently, is just when we were submitting our documents and just waiting those 6 or so weeks. And that felt so strange to finally take a step back and just not do anything because there was nothing else to do except wait.
Now, I didn't read, I know you had the 26 episode plan.
Mm-hmm.
I got to say that the scripts you had were very good. I loved the joke about Sheen not realizing where he's been for a few years. I thought that joke was gold. It definitely would go over the heads of people who'd never even watched Planet Sheen.
Yeah.
But what was the end game? What was the end game of that season for you guys? Was there kind of a big finale? Would it be one of those things that Futurama did for a few seasons where they weren't sure if they would get picked up or not, so they would kind of end it just to be safe, or did it just kind of subtly end?
We've always been a little hesitant to discuss the very fine details, just on the very off chance we ever get picked up again. But I will say, in general terms, that the kind of idea of the whole season was to take it a step up from where it had been before, make it a little more mature, a little more actiony, a little more, just a little more grown up. And so the kind of overall arc throughout the season was that the League of Villains was rebanding, was making a very slow, methodical push to destroy Jimmy Neutron, much more carefully and much more effectively than they had in the previous episodes. And so the season finale would have been the League's big play after you saw a lot of hints throughout the season of what they were planning. And the finale would have really put the entire group to the test, as well as all the allies they'd made throughout that season. And it would have definitely had, I would say, a lot of good resolution between the stories of that season, while also a little hint at what would come later. But I think it would have been a very action-packed finale that kind of tied up all the loose ends of all the characters and their relationships throughout the season.
Did at any point you because you only wrote was it 4 full scripts?
4 full scripts, yes.
There was one character that I don't think was ever brought back, but she was in the Win, Lose, or Kaboom episode. The one of the race of aliens, the semi love interest throughout that episode for Jimmy. Was that a character that you think you would have brought back in a future episode?
I think we had planned on. There were no specific episodes in season 4 where she was brought back, per se. And I think me and Ed and Sandra had some discussions, just kind of general, during our downtime of whether we would want her back in the finale. And I think we were kind of mixed on whether we would bring her back, just because we didn't really feel that a conflict between Jimmy, Cindy, and April was necessary at that point in the finale. And I think also, just trying to think logistically, we already would have had so many characters in that finale, and to bring back Alyssa Milano to voice her again, I think we were thinking that might eat up some of our precious budget at that point. Ed, is that kind of how you remember that?
Yeah, I mean, I think frankly we just really hadn't incorporated her into our season idea, and since we were kind of making like an arc, sort of a continuous season, we really just didn't include her.
I will say that I thought kind of my favorite aspect of what we were going to do with season 4 was, in our heads, we really wanted to, before we wrote the individual episodes, before we wrote the ideas for each episode, we just wanted to know what the seasons were about. And to us, season 1 was about the group learning, was about the group kind of fighting with each other, and at the end realizing they were kind of friends. Season 2 was about them becoming friends. Season 3 was about them realizing that they're kind of more than friends, they're becoming a family. And season 4 was where they put a lot of their conflicts behind them and really worked together as a family, admitting that they were very important to each other. And so in our scripts, there were a lot less interpersonal conflicts. After the first few episodes, we really kind of pushed hard for the idea that Jimmy and Cindy are clearly friends. They have snarky banter. They still fight about things because they're two stubborn people, but that they are not claiming that they're in a love-hate relationship anymore. It's a friendship they're trying to deny as love.
Right. So now take that whole experience up to now in 2016. What things do you take away from that year of writing and use it now? Is there anything that came along the way that you've just been implementing now, or anything that the writers from Jimmy Neutron, hearing from people who have actually worked on a show, is there anything that they told you that you just you keep using right now?
There's a few minor, I don't know if I'd call them minor, but there's a few general tips for me that really hit home and that I realized I've been doing in my own work. I realized just some kind of smaller things like characters should not always say each other's names when they're talking to each other. I'd always done that to make things more dramatic, but when you're talking to your friends in real life, you're not constantly saying, Alex, what should we do today? Good idea, Alex. You don't constantly say their name. I realized in screenwriting, staging is very important. You have to really picture in your head, make sure what you're describing can accurately be done. I realized in screenwriting that you have to trust the animators or real-life actors and directors to kind of bring your words to life. You don't need flowery descriptions like a novel. You keep things simple. You say they're in a room, or like he tosses at a ball. You don't have these huge flowery paragraph descriptions. So there were a lot of general tidbits that I picked up, and on a larger note, the idea that we sent to Nickelodeon for our original show, Continuum, that's become the novel, The Ripple Effect. We changed the name, and that's a finished novel that I just need to edit now. It's now a young adult novel.
No, geez, so that's coming on the way. That's actually a good transition into asking you guys what you've currently been working on, or anything that you'd like to plug or get out there, or anything you would like people to visit.
Yeah, well, I will say that after Continuum, as it was known at that time, was rejected by Nickelodeon, we spent maybe another, would you say, year ahead trying to shop that around to different networks and entering it in contests.
Yeah, I think we went to Amazon Studios. Trying to think what else we did. There may have been another contest or so there. We tried a few different things. I think we gave it our best shot.
It's just such a hard industry to break into, and I think we kind of realized that it would be better to get it created if we tried to make it a book, especially, we turned it into a young adult thriller novel, especially since, Hunger Games and Maze Runners, those kind of books are extremely popular now.
Right.
So that's what we've pretty much been working on ever since then. Ed helped me come up with the idea for the book. I wrote it, and he's been giving a ton of editing advice and been a huge part of the book's creation. And so now that just needs to be edited and then sent off to book agents. So that's the main thing that I've been working on since then.
And wow, so you guys actually took that idea and started shopping it to other places. Did any of them seem a little bit more promising than others? Were there any of them that just kind of stood out?
I will say that Amazon Studios seemed the best bet and the easiest to send it to because they're the most open to original content. We looked through pretty much every network that did kid shows, Netflix, Hulu, Yahoo TV. We looked through all those, and we tried to submit it, and unfortunately, without the backing of someone in the industry, a lot of them, they're like, you need to be submitted through an agent, and the agent says, well, you need experience in the industry for us to us to consider you. So it was a lot harder without Ed's backing. I'm sorry, without Mike's backing, Mike Gazaway.
Right, yeah. And it's a little unfair because the only way to really get experience is to push things like this out there. It's almost like you're working up against a wall that they put in front of you.
And the smarter thing for us to do if we were to purely consider writing as our sole venture would be to try to just get some entry-level jobs in the industry, move to California, be a screenwriter's assistant for a couple years. But unfortunately, Ed and I both have other jobs. I'm a veterinarian now. I just graduated, and Ed is
congratulations about that.
Thank you. And Ed, I'll let you say what you do.
I'm a researcher. Basically, I research auditory science. And so I work in a lab, a little not quite like Jimmy, but I guess you could say I'm a scientist. So
you don't have a cheese ray in your lab?
Unfortunately, no. Sometimes I wish I did, though.
Nate wants you to get to work on the cheese ray.
All right.
That was the one thing about I realized growing up now that about the show was I look through the eyes of, as an adult, so I look through the eyes of the adult characters, and I just love how they crafted a world that these crazy things happen and everybody's just okay with it.
Yeah.
And I go back to Dexter's Lab, which is just another boy genius who just, has a ridiculous amount of stuff, but it's hidden.
Yeah. Me and, we've had tons of discussions about that. Just the idea that Jimmy's parents know what he does, and he is clearly fighting alien. I mean, they discovered aliens, so just the idea that everyone's kind of okay with that. We've definitely poked some fun with that in our scripts and our fan fictions. The idea that the world just kind of ignores the greatest scientific mind that's ever been created.
Yeah, and they acknowledge it sometimes. It seems like the government still will come to his front door and say, we need your help right now. Yeah. And then after it's done, they just kind of shove him to the side.
Yeah, I mean, he's invented time travel, and it actually worked. So it's very odd that it's just very odd. There's no way around it.
Yeah, that's the funniest thing. Well, Nate, did you have any questions thus far?
Yeah, I think you covered it. So you can get it out of my face, man.
Oh, see, without context, that comes off wrong. Yeah, he's been just enjoying this conversation, which I have. Like I said, it's one thing to just create something like a painting or a script. It was another thing for you guys to really go out there and not only get the advice from the people who worked on the show, but to then take all of that and send it off to Nickelodeon. It was just incredible, and I really. I'm hoping the best for you guys. I really like whenever that book comes out, I will buy it. I'll be one of the first people in line to get it.
Awesome. I appreciate that.
So do you guys have any websites that, Ryan, do you want to plug your blog, or is there anything that you're regularly updating for either of you?
Yeah, sure. So my blog it's called Quiet Thinker 1 at WordPress. And it's a blog where I have a lot of back articles about Jimmy Neutron and this whole screenwriting thing. There's also a lot of stuff about vet school. And I do have a self-published novel on Amazon called Paranoia, a psychological thriller. Very different from the kid stuff I wrote. That one's a much more adult novel about a teenager's parents who were murdered, and he tries to solve that mystery and spirals down into insanity. Your standard coming-of-age tale. So that's kind of what's going on for me right now.
Ed, do you have anything that you regularly update, like a blog or something that people can?
For myself, I don't have a blog or anything like that. As far as my regular original writing goes, I'm one of those writers where I guess a little bit like Stephen King and Louis Sackar, where I'm pretty reclusive about it until I finally get out something that I'm happy with people seeing. So that's kind of my process. I hold it kind of close to the chest, and then once I'm ready for other people to see it, then I get it out there. So I think once I do have something to get out there, for sure, you'll see something from me.
And, absolutely, and we'll be sure to once something gets out there, we'll be sure to plug that for you guys. It's been absolutely wonderful to have you guys on. Have any lasting thoughts?
I will just say, because I'm both Ed and myself still love to hear what people think about them. I will plug my fan fiction stories, my old fanfics. Quiet Thinker on fanfiction.net. Lots of different stories on there. And Ed, your name is Farley Drexel. Yeah. So we always love to hear what people think about those old stories, even though we don't write them anymore.
Yeah. Hey, there's nothing when a show's over. There's nothing better than to find what other people have done about the show. I mean, there's so much fan fiction online for everything, but I would tell any of our listeners to check these guys out, because as far when it comes to the Jimmy Neutron scripts, it's as legit as you can get for new content if you're looking for it. So Ryan, Ed, I just wanted to thank you guys for coming on and sharing this story and this experience, because it's a hell of a ride, and yeah, thank you for being on here today.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. It was a pleasure.